In the shadows of a galaxy consumed by endless war, there are those who do not fight for honor, or for loyalty, or even for survival. They fight for rot, for decay, for a promise whispered in pestilent winds. In the hearts of the diseased and the damned, Nurgle's chosen walk. A path the sane cannot fathom, a path lined with suffering, yet strangely with a perverse serenity. What drives a mortal to embrace corruption willingly? What dark allure pulls the soul into the embrace of disease, despair, and decay? Tonight we step inside the mind of a cultist of Nurgle, a life twisted by devotion to the Plague Lord. Witness their choices, their rituals, their quiet moments of grotesque ecstasy, and confront the haunting question, would you endure this, and call it salvation? Call to action. If you dare to explore the darkness, like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into the grim depths of Warhammer 40K. The first touch of Nurgle is never dramatic. It does not announce itself with fire or fury. It slips quietly into the mind, like the faintest trace of a rot-stained wind drifting through a crumbling hive city. The streets are already suffocating, choked with the stink of industry, waste, and death. Yet amidst this stench, a whisper arrives, subtle, almost imperceptible, threading through the noise of human misery. It promises understanding, an intimacy with the decay that defines life itself. For those who hear it, the world begins to shift. Ordinary fears give way to fascination. Sickness is no longer merely suffering, it is revelation. In the dim corridors of his habitation, our cultist, still unmarked by Nurgle's gifts, feels this shift like a pulse beneath his skin. The body he thought so fragile and flawed becomes a canvas, a site for communion with something larger, older, and inexorably patient. Each cough, each fever, each lingering ache carries a hidden message. Others might recoil in disgust, yet he finds himself leaning closer. He traces the invisible lines connecting pestilence and life, mortality and eternity. There is a rhythm to decay, a pattern only the chosen can perceive. It is seductive, haunting, undeniable. At first it is merely curiosity, a fascination with the grotesque injury, disease, and corruption that others flee from. He reads forbidden tomes, collects scraps of knowledge hidden from the Imperium's oversight. Shadows in the hive alleys seem to beckon. Murmurs in the night speak of the Plague Lord's touch, and slowly, imperceptibly, the whisper becomes a voice. It tells him that suffering is sacred, that disease is not a curse, but a covenant. Where the ordinary citizen sees filth and decay, he sees purpose, a sacred geometry of rot and renewal. Sleep becomes uneasy, punctuated by visions. He dreams of pestilent gardens, where the air shimmers with spores, of bloated flowers exhaling a greenish mist. The dreamscape is grotesque and beautiful, frightening and intoxicating. Limbs twist in impossible ways, coughing up clouds of sparkling decay, and yet there is no pain, only the quiet thrill of transcendence. He wakes trembling, half with fear, half with yearning. The line between nightmare and revelation blurs. Each cough carries a secret, every fever a message from beyond the flesh. As he wanders the hive streets, he notices others, faces pale, skin mottled, bodies hunched under the weight of unseen afflictions. Most recoil from each other, isolated in their suffering, but there are a few rare, nearly invisible, who seem to walk with a different gait, who share a knowing glance when the plague passes. They nod to him without words. Recognition flickers in their eyes. They too hear the whisper. They too feel the gentle pulse of Nurgle's promise beneath their flesh, and in that fleeting connection, a seed is planted. He is no longer alone. Yet this awakening is not without terror. The human mind recoils from such intimacy with decay. Each fevered night, each shadowed corner, each breath that tastes faintly of rot, reminds him of mortality, the fragility of flesh. How much of this fascination is choice? How much is inevitability? The whisper does not answer, only hums its quiet, insistent song. And the more he listens, the more the world beyond the whisper, the Imperium, the mundane, the sterile, begins to fade. What once horrified now intrigues. What once repelled now calls. By the time the first mark appears, an almost imperceptible pustule blooming on the skin, The path is already set. He touches it and feels not pain, but recognition, as if the flesh itself has remembered something lost. The whisper has grown into a current, a river dragging him towards something he cannot yet name, towards something immense, eternal, inevitable. Nurgle does not demand loudly, he insinuates. And in this insinuation, he commands. The initiation has not yet begun, the cult has not yet called, but the first steps are taken, invisible yet irreversible, and the mortal mind bends quietly, inexorably, toward rot. Alleyways twist in impossible angles, stairwells crumble into shadows, and every neglected corner carries the unmistakable perfume of rot. Here, in the hushed decay of a hive, forgotten by the Emperor, the cultist feels the pulse of something greater than himself. The walls sweat with dampness, the air hums with unseen life, and every flickering light casts grotesque reflections on the grime-streaked floors. It is a world teetering on collapse, yet within that collapse lies a strange perfection, an order beneath the entropy, a rhythm to the ruin. He begins to imitate what he senses around him. Small acts at first, collecting spores from the walls, examining sores on the unfortunate, tasting the subtle tang of disease in the air. Each act is accompanied by a thrill, a shiver of anticipation, as though the universe itself acknowledges his attention. Nurgle's touch, he realizes, is not merely in sickness, but in the awareness of it, in the reverence for life's inevitable decay. Every pulse of his own blood reminds him of this truth. Every cough, every shiver is a note in a symphony he has only just begun to hear. There are moments when doubt pierces him like a shard of ice. Faces in the streets glare with disgust, children cry at his approach. He hears the whispered warnings of priests and enforcers. Contamination is sin, disease is abomination, and for a fleeting instant, he questions his fascination, but even in doubt, the whisper endures, soft yet insistent, curling around the edges of his consciousness like smoke. It is patient, eternal. It does not demand, it merely waits, letting curiosity grow into devotion, without resistance. At night, he finds himself wandering further into abandoned districts, places where the light of the hive has never touched. Here the smell is thick, almost tangible, and the air vibrates with life in forms both grotesque and mesmerizing. Fungi bloom across walls in colors no painter could capture, tendrils twisting like serpents, exhaling spores that shimmer faintly in the darkness. He touches them, inhales them, and feels a strange warmth spread through his veins. It is knowledge, it is power, it is communion. The whisper becomes a song, and he a tentative dancer, learning the steps. His dreams grow vivid, more frequent and harder to distinguish from waking life. In one he kneels before a bloated figure, whose skin is a tapestry of sores, whose laugh is both grotesque and comforting. The figure extends a hand, pustules gleaming in the dim light, and beckons him closer. "Fear nothing," it whispers, and in the voice is both menace and tenderness. "Embrace what is inevitable." He wakes with sweat soaking his clothes, yet a strange serenity clings to him. The terror is not repulsion, it is understanding, a recognition of his place within something far larger than any mortal mind. By now, subtle changes begin to manifest in his body, the first lesions, the faintest discoloration, the almost imperceptible swell of the skin. He examines them in secret, and instead of horror, he feels awe. Each blemish is a badge, each mark a connection, even the smell of it, the copper tang, the faint decay brings him closer to the whisper. The world has become twofold, the one the uninitiated see, bright and rigid, and the other, dark and breathing, pulsating with life and death intertwined. Only he can walk between them, and in that liminal space, he tastes the intoxicating freedom of forbidden knowledge. It is here, in this quiet surrender to fascination, that the first true choices are made. He could retreat, wash himself, scrub the stains from his flesh, deny the whisper. But he does not. Each night he follows it further, embracing the paths of shadows, inhaling the rot, tasting the decay, and in doing so he becomes both student and servant, apprentice to a god, whose lessons are written in the language of pestilence. He has heard the whisper, and in hearing it, he has already begun to answer. The journey has begun, though the trials are still invisible. The cult still hid. What he does not yet know is that the path will demand more than fascination. It will demand surrender. The whisper no longer waits in the shadows. It moves with him, curling around his thoughts, a constant companion in the hive's oppressive gloom. Faces in the street blur together, some twisted in fear, some twisted in sickness. But none can see what he has begun to understand. Life and decay are inseparable. Every breath carries mortality. Every heartbeat is a reminder of the inexorable march toward entropy. And yet, within that truth, there is a strange beauty, a pattern in the chaos that only he has been granted the privilege to perceive. He experiments now, small acts of communion with disease, a rash he brushes against his lips, a mold he cradles in his hands, spores inhaled like incense. Each act strengthens the connection, each sensation a hymn to the plague lord. There is no pain, no revulsion, only a quiet, intimate reverence. Even the imperfections of his own flesh are welcome, honored. He has become attuned to the subtle symphony of decay, its rhythms and crescendos that others cannot perceive. The hive, for all its filth, for all its despair, has become a cathedral of understanding, and yet fear remains, lurking at the edges of his mind. He knows what the Imperium would call him: heretic, mutant, abomination. The whisper does not erase this knowledge, it sharpens it. For every law there is an exception, every command a loophole. He is not defying merely human rules, he is embracing the inevitability that all flesh will fail, that all life is impermanent. In his defiance lies devotion. The path he treads is solitary, yet it is not lonely. Nurgle does not abandon those who listen. The god of decay is patient, watching, guiding, waiting for the mortal willing to step fully into the rot. The first true encounter with other initiates comes as a shock. Figures draped in rags, their skin mottled and glistening with the telltale marks of Nurgle, appear from the shadows. They move with a grace that belies the disease that devours them, their eyes shining with the same recognition he felt in fleeting glimpses. There is no greeting, no test at first, only acknowledgement. A hand reaches out, pustulas blooming, and he takes it without hesitation. In that instant, he understands the depth of what he has joined. A network of fellowship, a communion exists beyond the whisper. The god he serves is no mere voice. He is the architect of a living, breathing society built upon the inevitability of decay. With this contact comes ritual. Not yet the grand ceremonies of the full cult, but smaller acts, quiet affirmations of loyalty and curiosity. He kneels, he touches, he inhales. He repeats words he does not fully understand, yet they resonate in the marrow of his bones. Every motion, every breath, every heartbeat is a step further into Nurgle's embrace. The legions on his skin swell, bloom and shimmer with life unseen by ordinary eyes. He feels it coursing through him, not as sickness, but as awakening. The whisper becomes a chant, a guide, a mentor. He is learning to hear what others cannot, to see what others fear. As the chapter closes, the cultist stands at the edge of transformation. He is still mortal, still fragile, still bound by flesh that will betray him, but the first threads of devotion are woven deeply into his being. Nurgle's whisper has grown into a current, subtle, yet unstoppable, carrying him toward the initiation, the true communion, the surrender that will mark him forever. In the hush of the hive, among shadows and the scent of rot, he feels the first real stirrings of purpose. Fear is not gone, it is tempered by fascination, by awe, by understanding. He is no longer merely human, he is a vessel, a student, a servant of something vast, patient, and eternal, and the journey into the heart of decay has only just begun. The night of initiation arrives without fanfare. There are no trumpets, no drums, no heralds to announce the arrival of Nurgle's chosen. Only the scent of decay lingers in the air, thick and expectant, curling around the walls of the abandoned hive district where the cult gathers. Shadows twist unnaturally in the flickering light of makeshift torches. Figures emerge, cloaked in rags and sores, their skin glistening with pustulas that seem almost alive, pulsating to the rhythm of a disease only they can feel. The cultist stands at the periphery, heart hammering, senses stretched taut. He is no longer an observer. Tonight, he becomes a participant. The ritual begins quietly, a murmur of guttural voices, and the soft scratching of infected fingertips across scarred skin. He kneels on cold stone, inhaling the pungent bouquet of rot that permeates the chamber. Each breath carries a message, a promise, a lure. Endure, embrace, ascend. The leaders of the cult, figures whose devotion has transformed them into grotesque paragons of decay, approach. They touch him lightly, their pustulas warm and oddly comforting against his skin. Pain mingles with pleasure in this contact, a signal that the flesh itself has become a conduit for the Plague Lord's will. The trials begin, simple at first: endurance, patience, observation. He must withstand the stench, the flies, the crawling vermin that feast upon the spoiled remains scattered across the ritual ground. Others might recoil, might flee, but he stands still, breathing with the pulse of the hive itself. Every twitch of a nerve, every twinge of discomfort is amplified, teaching him that suffering is not punishment, it is communion. The whisper is no longer subtle, it guides him, a steady hand in a world of grotesque sensation. He is introduced to the first instrument of devotion, a chalice of festering liquid, a brew that carries the essence of decay itself. Its surface shimmers faintly, bubbles rising and bursting with a hiss that echoes in the chamber. To drink it is to taste the presence of Nurgle, to feel disease thread through his veins, reshaping, awakening. Fear seizes him for a heartbeat, but curiosity, fascination, and the pull of the whisper outweigh it. The world tilts, colors shift, and he feels his body both falter and strengthen simultaneously. Pain and pleasure, death and vitality, collapse into a single sensation of transcendence. Then come the lessons of surrender. He must relinquish control, allow the Plague Lord to claim small pieces of his flesh, his mind, his will. A pustule bursts under the ministrations of the elder cultists, the infection spreading not as injury, but as an awakening. He screams, yet the scream is swallowed by the chorus of others, who have already surrendered, a symphony of flesh in transition. Every pulse, every heartbeat, every drop of sweat is a declaration. I belong. The world beyond these walls ceases to exist. Only the hive, only the cult, only Nurgle remain. And yet, initiation is not merely physical. The trials stretch into the mind. Visions, vivid and unrelenting, flood his consciousness. He sees cities overrun by plague, billions succumbing to disease. Yet somehow within the devastation, there is order, a meticulous architecture of decay. Faces of the fallen smile with grotesque serenity. The whisper has become a voice, and the voice speaks not in words, but in understanding. To serve Nurgle is to accept the inevitability of corruption, to find beauty in what the uninitiated call horror. At the edge of the ceremony, he is offered choice: to retreat, to deny the path, to scrub away the first marks and return to ignorance, or to step fully into the embrace of rot, to commit body, mind and spirit to the Plague Lord. Every fiber of his being resonates with both fear and desire, but the whisper has guided him too long, too patiently. For hesitation, he steps forward, and in that step, the mortal world falls away. The cultist is no longer merely an observer or participant. He is now a vessel, a conduit for Nurgle's designs. The chamber seems alive, walls pulsating with unseen life, a symphony of decay vibrating through the very stones beneath. Every sound, the drip of slime, the rustle of vermin, the low hum of diseased flesh, is amplified, yet not frightening. Instead, it is music, an orchestration that teaches him rhythm, patience and reverence for what the sane reject. Here he begins to understand the sacredness of suffering. Guided by the elder cultists, he learns the art of the contagion. They press pustules, smear spores across his skin, whisper chants that curl around the marrow of his bones. Each gesture is a lesson, each sensation a scripture written in flesh and rot. The air is thick with disease, yet he breathes freely, inhaling the corruption as one might incense in a temple. There is a strange ecstasy in this surrender. Every moment of discomfort,
Every sting and itch becomes an affirmation. He belongs. He is chosen. He is alive in a way the uninitiated cannot imagine. Then come the symbols, marks etched into flesh, sigils carved not by blade, but by the slow, deliberate spread of infection. Each mark is a commitment, a binding promise to the Plague Lord. The pain is exquisite and fleeting, replaced almost immediately by a warmth that spreads through the body like molten gold. The lesions shimmer faintly in the torchlight, signaling not sickness, but awakening. He touches them, traces the paths of corruption, and feels the whisper grow into a symphony. Knowledge, devotion, and ecstasy are one and the same. He is brought before the elder known as the Keeper of Spores. This figure, more infection than human, regards him with eyes that shine like molten green glass. "Do you understand what you offer?" the Keeper murmurs, voice layered with echoes of disease and eternity. The cultist nods, though comprehension is more instinct than intellect. To understand Nurgle is not merely to think, it is to feel, to surrender, to perceive the patterns beneath the flesh, beneath the rot, beneath life itself. Every heartbeat is a lesson, every breath a sermon. He feels the Plague Lord's presence ripple through him, gentle yet insistent, demanding devotion without coercion. Next, he witnesses the trials of endurance. Fellow initiates writhe beneath the ministrations of disease, sweat glistening, pustules bursting, yet their faces shine with serenity. Pain is not punishment, it is purification. He joins them, letting the ritual consume his body, letting each sensation etch Nurgle's philosophy into his very being. Fear surfaces briefly. Will his flesh endure? Will his mind survive? But the whisper soothes, and he learns that true surrender is strength disguised as fragility. The more he gives, the more he understands. The more he suffers, the closer he comes to the truth. The final test is unseen yet profoundly felt. He is left alone in a chamber thick with spores, a stifling cocoon of disease. Every inhale is a confrontation with mortality, every exhale a negotiation with destiny. Shadows shift, shapes blur, and the whispers grow into a chorus of both menace and welcome. He feels the limits of his own body, senses the tremors of infection coursing through veins, yet he does not panic. Instead, he kneels, lowers his head, and allows the rot to flow through him. In this surrender, he discovers transcendence, the beauty of decay, the serenity of disease, the ecstasy of obedience to a God who demands nothing less than absolute acceptance. As the cultists return, the chamber is no longer the same. The air vibrates with accomplishment, with completion. He rises, transformed in ways subtle yet undeniable. The marks upon his skin, the changes within his mind, the whispers now a constant, patient companion, all signal that the initiation is complete. He has crossed the threshold. He is no longer merely mortal. He is a student of decay, a servant of Nurgle, a creature both fragile and eternal. The path stretches before him, dark and alluring, filled with trials yet unimaginable. But the first step has been taken, and there is no turning back. The cultist emerges from the initiation chamber, altered, though not violently so. The transformation is quiet, subtle yet profound. His flesh carries new marks, evidence of his devotion, faintly glimmering in the torchlight. His mind feels expanded, alive with the whispered knowledge of Nurgle, tuned to rhythms the uninitiated cannot hear. Every movement, every breath, every pulse of blood resonates with the presence of the Plague Lord. He is no longer an ordinary mortal. He has crossed into the liminal space between human and vessel, student and servant. The elder cultists observe him with solemn satisfaction. There is no applause, no celebration. These are not the ways of Nurgle's faithful. Recognition is given through touch, through the careful placement of a pustule or the subtle pressure of a hand against skin. The body itself speaks the language of devotion. The cultist feels this language fluently now, each sensation a declaration of allegiance. Every mark, every lesion, every subtle transformation is a testament to the whisper's power, to the inevitability of corruption, as both punishment and blessing. He is then guided to the Garden of Rot, a place few see before full initiation. Here, decay blooms with astonishing grandeur. Fungal flowers twist skyward, exhaling clouds of shimmering spores. Vermin crawl freely, unafraid, as if the garden itself is aware of who belongs. The scent of decomposition is no longer repellent. It is sacred, a perfume that mocks the faithful. In this garden, the cultist kneels, touches the fertile rot, and feels a profound connection to life and death entwined. The garden is both teacher and altar, illustrating the balance between suffering and transcendence, showing that beauty is inseparable from corruption. As he wanders deeper, he observes the true communion of the cult. Initiates cluster in small groups, exchanging knowledge, rituals and subtle techniques of devotion. Every act, from the gentlest smear of mold to the most daring embrace of infection, carries meaning. The cultist begins to understand the initiation is not merely a test, it is the first chapter in a lifelong apprenticeship. The whisper, once a subtle lure, now guides him with confidence, teaching him the patience, subtlety and endurance required to navigate the labyrinth of devotion that lies ahead. The night stretches long, yet the cultist does not tire. He feels a hunger, not for sustenance, but for understanding, for communion, for the small intimacies of disease that teach the philosophy of decay. Every cough, every twitch, every moment of discomfort becomes a meditation. He begins to see patterns in the spread of infection, rhythms in the pestilent dance of rot, order in what the sane call chaos. The whisper has grown into a chorus, the garden into a cathedral, and he is both student and acolyte, learning the sacred laws of a god whose dominion is infinite and patient. By the dawn of the next cycle, he is called to swear the first formal oath.
Words are spoken, syllables that taste faintly of rot and power. He repeats them, feeling the syllables resonate within bone and marrow, carrying meaning beyond the conscious mind. The oath is not mere ceremony, it is a binding of flesh, spirit and soul to the Plague Lord. In uttering it, he acknowledges the path he has chosen, accepts the trials that await and embraces the transformations yet to come. Fear is present, yes, but it is tempered by awe and the intoxicating beauty of surrender. As the sun, or what passes for sun in the hive, rises, the cultist steps out of the shadows with new awareness. He has endured, he has surrendered, he has begun to understand the sacred rhythm of decay. The world beyond the initiation chamber remains harsh, corrupt and fragile, but he moves through it differently now. Each footfall is guided, each glance carries insight. He is marked, changed and yet prepared. The path forward is uncertain, lined with dangers and temptations, but for the first time he feels the exhilaration of knowing where he belongs. The initiation is complete, yet it is only the beginning. The whisper, once subtle, now sings clearly, endure, embrace, ascend, and he answers, silently, with body, mind, and soul. The hive, already a labyrinth of decay, becomes a stage for the intricate choreography of disease and devotion. Initiates move among each other with a quiet understanding, each gesture, each cough, each subtle twitch a form of communication. There is no need for words. The shared rhythm of infection speaks louder than speech ever could. The cultist quickly learns that fellowship in decay is both comfort and trial. Every member carries their own marks, their own lessons, their own burdens of suffering, and together they form a delicate ecosystem. Some teach, some guide, some merely observe, yet each is indispensable. The more experienced cultists, whose bodies are canvases of pustules, scars and fungal blooms, act as mentors. They show the novice how to move with grace through the pestilent world, how to embrace suffering without fear, and how to read the subtle cues that indicate both danger and blessing. Every gathering carries ritual. The community thrives in small, intimate ceremonies where disease is celebrated, not feared. A pustule is anointed, spores are shared like sacred wine, and chants of devotion echo softly against the damp walls. The cultist participates eagerly, sensing the invisible threads that connect him to these others, recognizing in their faces the same awe and reverence he feels. Together, they create a microcosm of Nurgle's philosophy. Suffering is beauty, decay is sacred, and communion is not merely spiritual but physical, tangible, and immediate. Yet fellowship is not without its perils. Rivalries and jealousies simmer beneath the surface, subtle tensions born of ambition and desire for favor. Even in a world dedicated to rot, the human instinct to compete persists. The cultist observes quietly, learning to navigate these treacherous waters with patience and cunning. He understands that loyalty is earned not merely through devotion, but through skill, endurance, and the subtle mastery of both body and mind. The whisper reminds him always, every action, every choice is a note in the symphony of decay. Daily life in the Brotherhood is a delicate balance between ritual and survival. Food is scarce, hygiene is a concept for the outside world, and yet there is abundance in ways that matter most to the faithful. Every mold, every fungus, every pestilent growth is catalogued and revered. Every cough, every fever, every swell of infected skin is examined for insight, a subtle guide to Nurgle's will. The cultist learns to read these signs, to anticipate shifts in mood and favor, and to interpret the language of disease as clearly as any spoken tongue. The bonds of the Brotherhood are reinforced in moments of shared vulnerability. Initiates expose themselves to infection, deliberate and controlled, and in doing so, demonstrate trust. A pustule is opened, a contaminated chalice shared, a spore inhaled. Each act is a pledge, a testament to loyalty, and a means of deepening the mystical connection to the god of decay. Through these rites, the cultist begins to feel what it truly means to belong, not merely to follow, but to participate, to contribute, and to understand the sacred interdependence of flesh, disease, and devotion. Yet the pestilent Brotherhood is not merely a sanctuary, it is also a crucible. New initiates are tested not only by their own endurance, but by their ability to exist harmoniously within the collective. Any misstep, hesitation, disgust, or disloyalty is noted and corrected, sometimes brutally, sometimes subtly. The cultist experiences this firsthand, witnessing peers falter, rebound, or break, entirely under the weight of shared expectation. Through observation and participation, he internalizes the unwritten laws. Unity strengthens devotion, and devotion strengthens survival. The Brotherhood is a living organism, and every member is a vital cell. By the end of the first cycle, the cultist understands the true power of connection. Alone, he was guided by whispers. Together, they become a chorus. Individual suffering is transformed into collective understanding. Individual devotion becomes a current that moves through the body of the Brotherhood, amplifying the influence of Nurgle. In these moments of intimacy, he feels both fear and exhilaration, the knowledge that to belong fully is to surrender completely. Yet in that surrender lies unparalleled strength. Not all are equal, yet all are bound by the same devotion. The elders, their bodies twisted and bloated by disease, yet exuding an unsettling authority, guide without overt command. They move among the initiates with patience, correcting mistakes with a touch or a glance, teaching lessons not through words but through example and ritual. Every gesture, every shared moment of infection, reinforces their authority. The cultist learns to read these unspoken cues, recognizing favor and censure alike. Rituals grow more complex, demanding not only endurance, but creativity and insight. The cultist is tasked with crafting small effigies from spores and filth, infusing them with the essence of disease, in a controlled, deliberate manner. Each effigy is a microcosm of Nurgle's philosophy, impermanence, suffering, and the strange, grotesque beauty that arises from decay. Elder cultists watch, evaluate, and sometimes alter his work, demonstrating subtle nuances that only centuries of devotion could perfect. Through this process, he internalizes lessons that no simple instruction could convey. The bonds of the Brotherhood deepen through shared trial. Initiates are paired or grouped, tasked with enduring exposure to new and more virulent infections. Some falter, crying out, withdrawing into themselves, yet others emerge changed, stronger, more attuned to the rhythm of rot. The cultist feels both pride and trepidation as he witnesses their transformations. He too is tested, exposed to the living, breathing embodiment of pestilence, forced to confront the fragility of flesh and the resilience of spirit. Each trial strengthens the invisible threads that bind the Brotherhood together. Trust is paramount, yet fragile. Moments of hesitation are punished subtly, an effigy ruined, a spore withheld, a glance of disapproval. But the lessons are never cruel without purpose. Every corrective act reinforces unity, loyalty, and understanding. The cultist quickly learns that survival is inseparable from devotion, that his strength is measured not only by his own endurance, but by his capacity to synchronize with the collective. The whisper has become a chorus, guiding not only him, but the rhythm of the brotherhood itself. There are nights when the hive seems to pulse as one. Fires flicker, casting grotesque shadows, and the air is alive with the hum of countless small lives, insects, mold, fungi, and the subtle vibrations of infected skin. In these moments, the cultist senses the full breadth of Nurgle's dominion. Disease is not random, it is orchestrated, purposeful, and beautiful. The Brotherhood moves in harmony with this rhythm. Each cough, each shiver, each tremor of skin, a note in a symphony composed by the god of decay. He feels himself both small and vast, insignificant yet essential, a single strand woven into the intricate web of devotion. Even in the darkest corners of the hive, the cultist begins to perceive the subtle joys that fellowship brings. A shared meal of fungus, a whispered secret of a new infection, the soft laughter of those who understand the beauty of corruption, all create a bond that transcends fear and revulsion. These moments of intimacy, however grotesque, are sacred. They teach him that the Brotherhood is more than survival. It is communion, a living testament to the philosophy that suffering shared is elevated, transformed into understanding and power. By the end of his first full cycle within the Brotherhood, the cultist has internalized the truth. Devotion is never solitary. The whisper, once a quiet guide, now flows through every member of the Brotherhood, a living, breathing force that strengthens each individual even as it binds them together. Suffering becomes shared, knowledge becomes communal, and the beauty of decay is amplified 1,000-fold by collective recognition. He has moved from tentative observer to active participant, and in doing so, he glimpses the full potential of what it means to serve Nurgle. The cultist now moves among his brethren, with confidence tempered by reverence. Each gesture, each act of communion, is deliberate, intentional, a part of the living ritual that binds them together. He notices the subtle interplay of disease and devotion, the way a pustule can signify loyalty, a spore can communicate intent, a cough can confirm understanding. The body has become language, infection, a vocabulary, and the Brotherhood, a congregation fluent in this grotesque tongue. Every moment within it is a lesson, every interaction a scripture, written in flesh and rot. Trust and intimacy extend beyond mere ritual. The cultist witnesses acts of extraordinary sacrifice, the sharing of infections in carefully measured doses, the transfer of the most potent spores from one body to another. These exchanges, delicate yet profound, are both literal and symbolic. To give a part of oneself in this way is to bind one's destiny to another, creating invisible threads of loyalty, dependency, and shared power. The more he participates, the more he perceives the subtle currents that guide the Brotherhood, the unspoken rules that maintain harmony amid grotesque chaos. Yet life within the Brotherhood is not entirely serene. Tensions simmer, rivalries flare, and ambition occasionally eclipses devotion. He observes quietly, understanding that not all conflicts are resolved through ritual or reverence. Some are subtle, expressed in gestures or choice of whom to infect first, which spores to offer, and which lessons to impart. The elders maintain order, their grotesque forms radiating authority, but the cultist learns that discernment is key. Loyalty must be navigated carefully, respect earned and missteps forgiven, or corrected in ways that strengthen rather than weaken the collective. Through these lessons he begins to grasp a profound truth. The Brotherhood is a reflection of Nurgle himself. It is patient, eternal, and perfectly imperfect. Every flaw, every blemish, every act of suffering is celebrated, transformed into a tool of learning, a mark of devotion, and a testament to resilience. The collective becomes a living organism, each member a vital cell, each action a heartbeat in a rhythm older than the Imperium, older than mortality itself. In this realization, the cultist experiences a surge of both fear and exhilaration. Fear of failing, exhilaration at the depth of connection and understanding available to those willing to surrender fully. As days pass,
The cultist participates in more elaborate ritual. The communal ceremonies now involve choreographed movements, the deliberate exchange of spores and synchronized chants that vibrate through the hive's corridors like low thunder. He watches, imitates, and eventually contributes, feeling the pulse of Nurgle's influence in each gesture. These ceremonies solidify not only loyalty, but understanding, the rhythm of disease, the harmony of suffering, and the intricate beauty of decay that defines the Brotherhood. Participation transforms him. He is no longer merely guided by whispers, he now guides others in subtle ways, reinforcing the invisible bonds of the pestilent community. Moments of reflection come rarely, but when they do, they are profound. Alone, he traces the lines of pustules on his own skin, feeling the pulse of infection and devotion intertwined. He contemplates the strange paradox of his life. Once fearful and isolated, he is now immersed in fellowship, strength derived from shared suffering. He sees the symmetry of corruption, the aesthetic of rot, and the sacred geometry of decay. These reflections are private, intimate, and ineffable, yet they reinforce a deep understanding. Nurgle's gift is not just disease, it is the comprehension of mortality, transformation, and unity through adversity. As the chapter draws to a close, the cultist stands among his brethren, fully aware of his place in the Brotherhood. He is no longer a tentative initiate, nor a mere vessel for whispers. He is participant, observer, contributor, and servant. The pestilent Brotherhood is a living testament to the philosophy he has embraced. Decay is beauty, suffering is sacred, and devotion is best shared. He understands now that this communion, grotesque and eternal, is the true power of Nurgle's followers, a harmony that transcends flesh, mind, and mortality itself. Hidden deep within the bowels of the hive, beyond corridors few dare traverse, it thrives as a grotesque paradise. The air is thick with spores, sweet and acrid, swirling in green-tinged mist that clings to skin and breath alike. The cultist steps carefully, awestruck, as though entering a cathedral, whose architecture is written not in stone, but in decay. Every surface pulses faintly, alive with unseen life, a symphony of decomposition that hums beneath the senses. Here, Nurgle's philosophy is made tangible. Fungi bloom in impossible forms, flowers swollen with pestilence and color that would be beautiful in any other world, yet here they signify disease, corruption, and the inevitability of mortality. Insects crawl freely across mosses of soft decay, feeding, reproducing, dying, only to feed again. The air vibrates with subtle currents, every inhalation carrying knowledge. The cultist feels it, tastes it, inhales the sacred rot as if it were incense, and senses the presence of the Plague Lord in every living, dying, and reborn organism. The elders guide him through this garden, their bodies grotesque yet majestic, adorned with pustules, fungal growths, and scars that speak of devotion long endured. Their movements are slow, deliberate, each gesture a lesson. They touch blooms, they inhale spores, they whisper to the vermin as if communicating secrets only Nurgle's faithful can understand. The cultist follows, careful not to disturb the rhythm of life and death, and begins to perceive the subtle language of decay, the way a leaf curls, a fungus pulses, a larva wriggles, all communicating purpose, order, and sacred design. He kneels beside a patch of bioluminescent mold, marveling at its intricacy. The spores rise like a shimmering mist, tickling his skin, invading his senses, and he shivers with understanding. In this garden, decay is not grotesque, it is sublime. Every curl of rot, every bubble of pus, every insect feeding on carrion, is a lesson in Nurgle's design. Beauty and horror are inseparable, destruction and creation are one. The whisper has become a chorus, guiding his hands, his gaze, his breath. Every movement in the garden is both an act of devotion and a form of communion with the god of decay. The cultist is introduced to new rites. He is asked to nurture, to tend, to participate in the cycles of life and death that define the god. A pustule is carefully transplanted onto a fungal bloom. Spores are distributed across mosses in intricate patterns. Insects are guided gently to ensure they feed where their contribution is sacred. Each act is subtle, deliberate, and profoundly significant. The garden teaches patience, observation, and reverence. The cultist learns that Nurgle's dominion is not merely about disease, It is about understanding the rhythms of existence, about seeing life through the lens of decay. There is a strange serenity in this place. The hum of life and death, the shimmer of spores, the slow movements of the elders, all create a rhythm that soothes yet sharpens the senses. Pain, fear, and revulsion are absent here, replaced by awe, contemplation, and a quiet thrill. The cultist senses his own body differently now, attuned to the pulse of infection within himself and within the garden. Every shiver, every heartbeat, every flicker of sensation is amplified, a reminder that to serve Nurgle is to participate fully in the sacred cycles of transformation. Even the shadows in the Garden of Rot carry meaning. They stretch unnaturally, reflecting shapes that shift with the movement of spores, the sway of fungal tendrils, the crawling of vermin. At first, the cultist fears these shapes, yet soon he learns to read them. The interplay of light and decay teaches observation, patience, and understanding. He recognizes patterns, senses intent, and begins to anticipate the flow of energy in the garden. The whispers of Nurgle, once subtle, are now harmonized with the pulse of this living cathedral. Every step he takes, every gesture he makes, is both a lesson and an act of devotion. By the end of his first cycle within the Garden of Rot, the cultist feels transformed. The world outside is still harsh, still fragile, still terrifying, but here, in this sacred space, he understands the elegance of decay, the sanctity of disease, and the beauty of shared suffering. He is no longer merely an observer or participant. He is a steward, a student, a devotee fully immersed in the sacred architecture of Nurgle's philosophy. The garden has become both mentor and altar, a place of learning, reflection, and communion with the God whose dominion is eternal, patient, and unrelenting. The deeper the cultist ventures into the Garden of Rot, the more he realizes that every living, dying, and decaying element carries purpose. A cluster of pulsating fungi seems at first random, yet the elders point out subtle alignments, patterns invisible to the uninitiated. Each bloom, each curl of mold, each tiny insect contributes to a hidden symphony of life and death. The cultist kneels, tracing the lines of spores with reverent fingers, feeling the vibrations beneath his touch, sensing the current of decay that binds the garden into a living organism. Elders guide him in new rituals designed to deepen the bond between flesh and rot. He is asked to inoculate certain blooms with carefully prepared pustules, to guide swarms of insects over decaying matter, and to observe the transformations that follow. These tasks demand patience, precision, and trust in the divine rhythm of Nurgle. Each act is subtle yet significant, teaching him that the god of decay does not demand mindless obedience, but understanding, insight, and devotion expressed through careful attention to the smallest detail. The cultist begins to perceive lessons in suffering itself. He watches as older initiates endure controlled exposure to virulent infections, observing the way they embrace discomfort without fear or revulsion. Pain, in this context, becomes sacred. He sees the grace with which the infected move, the serenity in their eyes, the subtle smiles that suggest a communion with forces far greater than themselves. Slowly, he learns that endurance is not mere survival. It is a pathway to understanding, a method to attune one's mind and body to the rhythms of rot and renewal. Through these trials, the whisper that first led him to Nurgle evolves into a guiding chorus. It now resonates with the pulse of the garden itself, harmonizing with the subtle currents of spores, fungi, and insects. He feels the connection in every breath, every heartbeat, every tremor of skin. Knowledge and devotion intertwine. Each task, each ritual, each careful observation reinforces a truth he had glimpsed, but never fully grasped. Decay is not destruction, it is transformation, and within it lies the eternal beauty of Nurgle's dominion. Even in solitude, the garden teaches. When left alone to tend certain blooms, he observes subtle interactions, fungi consuming one another, insects distributing spores with meticulous care, decay feeding new life in an endless loop. He realizes that mastery of Nurgle's gifts is not only about enduring infection, but about understanding the sacred interplay of life, death, and corruption. In these quiet, almost imperceptible moments, he feels the profound weight of devotion. To serve is to witness, to guide, and to participate in the eternal cycle of rot and renewal. He also witnesses the communal aspect of the garden. Fellow initiates exchange spores and insights, demonstrating the subtle techniques of cultivation, infection, and ritual. Each act is both practical and symbolic. Sharing a bloom, guiding a swarm, or observing the effects of a new fungus is simultaneously an act of devotion and an affirmation of fellowship. The cultist begins to understand that the garden is not just a space of learning, it is a crucible for unity, a place where the bonds of the pestilent brotherhood are forged and strengthened through shared reverence for disease and decay.
By the end of this cycle, he feels the first true stirrings of mastery. He can sense the flow of spores, anticipate the needs of blooms, and perceive subtle imbalances in the ecosystem of the garden. The whispers, once ethereal, are now intimately intertwined with his own perception, guiding his hands and thoughts. The elders nod in quiet approval, recognizing that he has moved beyond mere participation into comprehension. He is now a steward of Nurgle's sacred architecture, capable of tending both the physical manifestations of rot and the spiritual lessons embedded within them. The Garden of Rot, with its shimmering spores, pulsating fungi, and endless symphony of decay, has become more than a place. It is a living teacher, a sacred space and a mirror of the cultist's own transformation. Every inhalation, every touch, every observation carries revelation. Here, in this cathedral of corruption, he learns that the path to devotion is patience, understanding, and surrender, and that the beauty of Nurgle's domain is not in the grotesque alone, but in the harmony of life, death, and decay intertwined. The final lessons of the garden are subtle, almost imperceptible, yet transformative. The cultist begins to notice the smallest fluctuations, a bloom's slight discoloration, the rhythm of an insect swarm, the faint shimmer of spores suspended in air. These are not mere details, they are signals, messages from Nurgle himself, woven into the very fabric of decay. By attending to them, he learns patience, perception, and reverence. Each observation, each careful action, becomes a meditation, a way of synchronizing his body and mind with the eternal rhythms of rot. The elders watch quietly, offering guidance only when necessary. Their presence is simultaneously a comforting and imposing, a reminder that devotion carries responsibility. The cultist begins to internalize the delicate balance of care and control, understanding that Nurgle's gifts are both nurturing and demanding. Every bloom tended, every spore dispersed, every insect guided, is an act of communion, a physical and spiritual affirmation of faith. Mastery in the garden is not about domination, but harmony, a careful orchestration of life, decay, and transformation. Isolation in the garden brings reflection. The cultist kneels beside a cluster of luminous fungi, feeling their subtle pulses against his fingertips. He contemplates the path that led him here, the whisper, the initiation, the fellowship of the brotherhood, and now this cathedral of corruption. Each stage of his journey has reinforced a singular truth: decay is not a curse to be avoided, but a teacher to be revered. He breathes in the spores, feeling them mingle with his own essence, and experiences a profound intimacy with the cycles of mortality. The fear that once gripped him has been replaced with awe and understanding. New responsibilities are bestowed. The cultist is asked to guide younger initiates, teaching them the lessons he has learned through observation and trial. He demonstrates how to tend the blooms, distribute spores, and interpret the subtle signs of life and decay. This is both honor and trial. He must maintain his own focus and discipline, while fostering growth and understanding in others. Through teaching, he realizes that devotion is magnified when shared, and that the garden is not merely a place of learning, but a crucible for leadership, patience, and stewardship. Even the darkness of the garden carries wisdom. Shadows twist and curl, revealing hidden life or warning of unseen dangers. At first, the cultist fears these shifting forms, but he soon learns to read them as the elders do. The shadows are not malevolent, they are part of the symphony, reflections of the delicate balance between life, death, and corruption. Each movement in shadow carries insight, and he begins to anticipate the subtle changes that signal growth, decay, or transformation. The garden teaches that awareness, attentiveness, and understanding are as vital as endurance and devotion. In these final lessons, he feels a unity with both the garden and the brotherhood. The whisper, the blooms, the insects, and the elders all harmonize into a single current of understanding. Devotion
is no longer a solitary act. It is a living, breathing force that flows through every member, every organism, and every cycle of decay. The cultist perceives the interconnectedness of all things, the sacred architecture of disease, and the eternal rhythm of mortality, made manifest in this living cathedral. By the time he leaves the Garden of Rot, he is irrevocably changed. Every breath, every motion, every thought carries the imprint of Nurgle's philosophy. He has learned to see beauty in corruption, to embrace suffering as a path to understanding, and to participate fully in the sacred cycles of life and decay. The garden has imparted patience, perception, and reverence. It has taught him that devotion is not merely obedience, but communion, stewardship, and insight. The cultist steps back into the hive, carrying the lessons of the garden in body, mind, and spirit, prepared for the trials that await, and aware that the path of Nurgle is eternal, patient, and inexorably consuming.
The whisper had grown into a chorus, and now it guided more than thought, it guided action. The cultist, no longer a novice, stands at the threshold of a new reality. Beyond the garden, beyond the hive, lies a world that resists decay, that clings to order and life as if immortality were attainable. The pestilent crusade begins not with fanfare, but with purpose. It is a mission woven from rot, infection, and devotion, each step a manifestation of Nurgle's will. The hive trembles as the cultists move in silent formation, bodies marked with pustules, rashes, and fungal blooms that glow faintly under the flickering torchlight. Their presence is a subtle force, almost imperceptible to the uninitiated, yet utterly transformative for those who witness it. The cultist walks among them, feeling the pull of communion and the weight of responsibility. Each step is deliberate, each gesture measured. They are not marauders in the common sense. They are envoys of entropy, sowers of sacred decay, instruments of the Plague Lord's patient dominion. Their first task is infiltration. The pestilent crusade does not begin with noise or destruction, but with subtlety, patience, and observation. The cultist watches the world outside the hive, noticing the fragile structures, the lives teetering on the brink of chaos. He observes the rituals of the uninitiated, the delicate patterns of commerce and governance, the fragile bonds of loyalty that keep the Imperium clinging to order. Every detail matters. Each moment of inattention or underestimation is an opportunity for disease to spread, for Nurgle's influence to grow. In the field, the cultist applies lessons from the Garden of Rot. Spores are dispersed with care, infections introduced into water supplies, mold cultivated in secret. Every action is precise, a deliberate dance of decay that transforms the environment without revealing the hand that guides it. He observes the subtle interplay of contamination, recognizing how each act, no matter how minor, contributes to the grand tapestry of pestilence. The whisper instructs, guides, and corrects, ensuring that every movement aligns with the Plague Lord's will. The cultist's fellowship proves invaluable. Each member of the pestilent crusade brings unique expertise, honed through years of initiation, ritual, and experience. Some are adept at cultivation of new pathogens, others at spreading corruption through subtle social influence, and still others at patience, observation, and the meticulous tracking of outcomes. Together they operate as a singular organism, each individual a node in a network of disease and devotion. The cultist quickly learns to anticipate their movements, to synchronize with the rhythm of the collective, and to trust the whispers that flow between them like a silent language. Encounters with outsiders are a delicate affair. Soldiers, laborers, and citizens move unknowingly through the web of infection, unaware of the currents beneath their feet. The cultist observes without fear, noting weaknesses in structure, lapses in hygiene, and moments of vulnerability. Each observation becomes a lesson, each action a step further into mastery. Patience is paramount, haste is the enemy. Nurgle's way is never violent for violence sake. It is deliberate, thoughtful, and inexorably patient. Every infection introduced is a seed, every cough a herald of transformation, every fever a testament to the Plague Lord's subtle orchestration. As the first wave of contamination spreads, the cultist experiences the thrill of creation in decay. The world reacts, shifts, and transforms under the influence of the pestilent crusade. Structures falter, health diminishes, and yet order itself is unaware of the symphony unfolding. The cultist observes, records, and adapts, learning the rhythms of entropy on a scale larger than the Garden of Rot, larger than the hive, larger than even his own body. The whisper guides, the fellowship supports, and Nurgle's will manifests in the delicate art of corruption. By the end of the first cycle of the pestilent crusade, the cultist has embraced a new understanding. He is no longer merely a student or participant. He is an agent of transformation, a vessel through which the Plague Lord's patience, power, and philosophy are made manifest. The world beyond the hive is fragile, yet in that fragility lies opportunity. The pestilent crusade is both lesson and trial, a test of skill, devotion, and comprehension on a scale vast and terrifying, and the whisper, ever present, sings its quiet chorus: endure, observe, spread, transform. The pestilent crusade spreads slowly, methodically, like the growth of mold in a damp corner. The cultist moves through towns and hive corridors with quiet purpose, observing the fragile threads that hold communities together. Each cough, each fever, each unnoticed infection is a note in a symphony he helps orchestrate. He applies lessons from the Garden of Rot with precision, nurturing the invisible currents of disease while remaining unseen. The outside world perceives nothing, yet beneath the surface, transformation is underway. Fellow cultists operate as both allies and teachers. They demonstrate the subtleties of pestilence, guiding spores to hidden reservoirs, contaminating food and water with skillful care, and cultivating fungal growths that will bloom when conditions are perfect. The cultist absorbs every lesson, learning not only technique, but timing, patience, and the delicate balance between exposure and concealment. Nurgle's will is expressed not in chaos, but in orchestrated entropy, and the pestilent crusade moves in harmony with this principle. Encounters with the unsuspecting are both subtle and profound. He observes children coughing in the streets, workers growing feverish in the corridors of factories, and city officials weakened by the creeping influence of corruption. Each moment carries opportunity. A stray spore can change the course of events. An unnoticed blemish can shift loyalties, and a small outbreak can ripple through entire districts. The cultist watches, guides, and adjusts, learning the art of subtle manipulation, and recognizing that power is not always measured by force, but by the quiet influence of persistence. The cultist also begins to understand the psychology of contagion. Fear and ignorance are as potent as infection itself. He observes the way communities react to illness, noting their attempts at control, their rituals of cleansing, their prayers to gods who cannot intervene. Each reaction provides insight, allowing the cultist to anticipate, adapt, and refine the spread of disease. The pestilent crusade is not mindless destruction, it is strategy, observation, and execution combined with devotion. The whisper reinforces this understanding, guiding both thought and action, weaving a thread of patience and precision through every deed. Night falls, and the cultist finds himself in the heart of a district already subtly touched by rot. The smells are familiar, yet intensified: mold, decay, and the faint metallic tang of infected blood. He kneels briefly, inhaling the atmosphere, allowing the garden's lessons to inform his next actions. Every act of contamination is deliberate, every gesture aligned with Nurgle's design. The whisper grows clearer, not just in instruction, but in affirmation. He feels the pulse of the Plague Lord in the environment itself, recognizing that devotion is as much about observation as it is about action. Together with his brethren, he oversees the spread of spores, the cultivation of mold in hidden corners, and the deliberate nurturing of illnesses. Their movements are choreographed, silent yet powerful. Each cultist understands their role, each action contributes to the broader design, and each member of the pestilent crusade reinforces the other. The cultist feels the thrill of participation on a scale greater than the hive, or even the Garden of Rot, a scale that encompasses entire districts, entire cities, all orchestrated with patience and devotion. By the end of the first full cycle, the cultist begins to see the fruits of their labor. Minor illnesses bloom into noticeable outbreaks, unnoticed at first, then gradually impossible to ignore. Communities shift, behaviors change, and the subtle hand of the Plague Lord is felt without ever being seen. The pestilent crusade is no longer an experiment, it is a force, a living expression of Nurgle's philosophy, a delicate yet unstoppable manifestation of decay. The cultist, fully immersed, understands that this is not the end, but merely the beginning. The whisper reminds him, endure, observe, spread, transform. The world beyond the hive no longer feels foreign or hostile. It is a canvas, upon which Nurgle's designs are painted with subtlety and patience. Each town, each district, each unsuspecting individual becomes part of a living tapestry, a demonstration of entropy as both art and philosophy. The whisper guides every step, every breath, every motion, harmonizing with the pulse of decay in the environment itself. He observes the interplay of fear and resilience in those who are touched by the first waves of infection. Some falter, others resist, yet every response provides insight. He notes the microcosms of human behavior, the way officials react to illness, the ways communities attempt to shield themselves, and the subtle cracks in social order that allow disease to take root. To Nurgle's faithful, these observations are sacred lessons. Each reaction, each attempt at control, each small act of defiance or despair is data to be understood, patterns to be integrated into the ongoing strategy of devotion. The cultist works alongside his brethren, a cohesive unit orchestrated like the movements of a single organism. They plant spores in hidden corners, distribute fungal growths in places no one will notice, and cultivate minor infections that will grow at the perfect pace. There is no chaos in their actions, only precision, patience and devotion. The cultist feels the thrill of creation in decay, the exquisite satisfaction of seeing subtle transformations unfold without the need for overt force. Every step is a lesson in restraint, every measured act a manifestation of divine influence. Sometimes the crusade encounters obstacle, guards, rival cultists, or simple misfortune threaten to reveal their work or disrupt their careful balance. In these moments, the cultist learns the value of improvisation within discipline. He observes how the group adapts, alters their movements, and redirects the spread of contagion without compromising the overall plan. The whisper advises, yet the actions remain deliberate, intelligent and aligned with Nurgle's philosophy. Here, patience, cunning, and understanding are as vital as endurance or devotion. The cultist also begins to see the intangible rewards of the crusade. Communities subtly change in response to the infections, habits shift, vigilance wanes, and the delicate cracks in order grow wider. He perceives the invisible hand of Nurgle guiding outcomes, not through direct force, but through the patient accumulation of minor transformation. Each cough, each fever, each infected child or laborer is a note in a larger symphony, and the cultist has become both composer and conductor, attuned to the rhythms of change. By the end of the cycle, the cultist experiences a profound sense of purpose. The pestilent crusade has matured beyond simple experimentation. It has become a mechanism of devotion, observation, and transformation. The whisper is no longer merely instruction, it is affirmation, a reminder that every subtle act contributes to the eternal designs of Nurgle. He feels unity with his brethren, with the spores and fungi, with the cycles of decay and renewal that flow through the world. His understanding has deepened. Patience, observation, and subtle influence are the highest expressions of devotion. As the cultist prepares to move to the next district, he pauses to observe the results of their labor. Fevered citizens, minor outbreaks, and creeping mold serve as testament to the efficacy of careful, deliberate action. There is beauty in the transformation, majesty in the unseen work of corruption, and serenity in the knowledge that Nurgle's will is being enacted with precision. The pestilent crusade is unstoppable, not through force, but through persistence, patience, and devotion. And the whisper, ever present, sings in harmony with the rhythm of decay: endure, observe, spread, transform. The pestilent crusade had tested his skill, patience, and devotion, yet Nurgle's greatest gift had not yet revealed itself. The whisper had guided him, the Brotherhood had supported him, and the garden had taught him. Now, he would witness the full measure of what it meant to be a vessel of the Plague Lord, a servant whose devotion could birth transformation on an unimaginable scale. The reward comes not as gold or glory, but as presence, a visceral, overwhelming communion with the god of decay. It begins subtly, a tingle under the skin,
a faint warmth in the marrow, a subtle vibration in every nerve. The cultist feels it first in his hands, the tips of his fingers pulsing with life and death intertwined. Then in his chest, a deep resonance that mirrors the rhythm of the garden and the hive. The whisper transforms into a song, faint but insistent, echoing through bone and flesh, vibrating in harmony with every cell in his body. The elders lead him to a secluded chamber, walls slick with moisture, the air thick with spores and the scent of rich decay. Here, the cultist kneels, observing the ritual that will mark the apex of his devotion. The elders chant in low, guttural tones, their voices intertwining with the whispers, the hum of fungal growths, and the subtle rhythm of unseen insects. Each syllable resonates with meaning, each note a vibration that travels through skin, bone and soul. The cultist feels every pulse, every vibration, every syllable, as if it were a physical touch, a communication from the Plague Lord himself. A spore-laden chalice is offered. The cultist drinks, feeling the substance mingle with blood and marrow, infusing him with the essence of disease and decay. Pain and ecstasy are inseparable. Each breath carries knowledge, each heartbeat carries understanding. He perceives patterns, connections and rhythms that had been invisible before. Infection is no longer merely a tool, it is an expression, a language, a medium through which the Plague Lord communicates with those who are ready to listen. The elders guide his hands over sigils inscribed in fungal growths, tracing intricate patterns that pulse with life and rot. Each motion is deliberate, purposeful, and sacred. The cultist feels his body responding, transforming subtly but unmistakably. His skin tingles with nascent pustules, his hair bristles with fine spores, and a faint luminous growth spreads along his forearm. Pain is present, but it is tempered by awe and understanding. Every change is a gift, a lesson, a sign of favor from the God who delights in both corruption and revelation. Time loses meaning within this chamber. Minutes stretch into hours, yet the cultist perceives the flow of change with exquisite clarity. The whisper evolves into full communion, a voice that speaks not only to thought, but to instinct, to every cell, to the rhythms of breath and pulse. He experiences the sacred duality of decay and vitality, life nourishing corruption, suffering enriching understanding, and devotion amplifying both. He is not merely mortal, he is a vessel, a bridge between the ephemeral world and Nurgle's eternal dominion. The reward is also knowledge. He sees visions of pestilence sweeping across worlds, cities bending to the subtle influence of disease, entire populations transformed by the patient hand of decay. He understands not only method, but philosophy. Suffering is not evil, corruption is not cruelty, and the Plague Lord's gifts are not punishments, but opportunities for enlightenment. Each revelation strengthens both mind and body, fusing devotion with comprehension, skill with insight. He realizes that this is the apex of the cultist's journey, to serve, to transform and to witness the divine mechanics of entropy in action. By the end of this first cycle of reward, the cultist emerges fundamentally changed. His body bears the marks of favor, his mind hums with understanding, and his spirit resonates with the eternal song of decay. He feels both small and vast, fragile and eternal, mortal yet inextricably connected to the infinite dominion of Nurgle. The elders watch in solemn satisfaction, acknowledging that he has earned the title of a true plague bearer, one whose devotion has been tested, refined and sanctified. His senses sharpen, attuned to the rhythms of disease and decay. Every breath, every sound, every vibration of air and surface conveys subtle information. The whispers, now a constant presence, reveal insights that were once invisible. The patterns of infection, the growth of mold, the spread of spores, all become readable, comprehensible and malleable in his hands. He realizes that his body is no longer merely human, it is a conduit, a vessel through which Nurgle's dominion can manifest. The elders demonstrate more advanced rites, showing how to channel the Plague Lord's influence into both subtle and devastating effects. The cultist practices, carefully guiding pustules, spores and fungal growths in intricate controlled pattern. Each act is a meditation, a communion, and a form of devotion. Through repetition, he internalizes the mechanics of contagion, the art of patient corruption, and the philosophy that underpins the Plague Lord's gift. Knowledge and power flow together, inseparable and reinforcing, as he moves with precision through each sacred task. Pain remains, but it is now intertwined with ecstasy. The sensation of transformation courses through his body, skin thickening, pustules forming, fine spores glimmering faintly along his arms and chest. His breath is shallow, yet steady. His pulse is rapid, yet measured. Each shift in his physical form carries significance, each change a lesson, a confirmation of favor, and a manifestation of divine intention. He begins to sense the limits of his endurance, testing boundaries and learning the delicate balance between transformation and survival. The cultist begins to see the garden of rot within himself. Tiny blooms, delicate fungal patterns and subtle pustules emerge, echoing the rhythms and designs he observed in the garden of rot. Every cell participates in the symphony of decay, and he perceives the intricate choreography of life and disease as an intimate personal reality. His body becomes both altar and instrument, a living testament to Nurgle's philosophy, and a reflection of the lessons learned from both the garden and the pestilent crusade. The whispers deepen, guiding him to extend influence beyond the chamber. He reaches out with subtle gestures, spreading spores into the corners of the hive, infusing the air with controlled contagion, and observing the effects. Each act is deliberate, precise, and sacred. He begins to manipulate the flow of decay, both within his body and the environment, sensing the balance of life and death, the delicate tension between vitality and corruption. He understands that mastery is not only about endurance, but about awareness, control, and devotion expressed through action. Visions intensify. He sees entire populations touched by disease, entire cities bending under the patient hand of pestilence. Yet these visions are not of chaos. They are harmonious, orchestrated, and purposeful. Each outbreak, each infection, each subtle ripple of change is part of a larger pattern, a testament to the Plague Lord's infinite patience and wisdom. The cultist comprehends his role within this design. He is a participant, a steward, and a conduit. His devotion is inseparable from the manifestation of decay, and in this understanding he experiences both awe and humility. By the end of the second cycle, the cultist is no longer merely a follower. He is an agent of transformation. His body, mind, and spirit are infused with the Plague Lord's gifts. He moves with a new grace, observes with heightened perception, and acts with deliberate, sacred purpose. The whispers are no longer guides alone. They are companions, teachers, and affirmations of his devotion. Every pulse, every breath, every tremor in the air is a reminder that the reward of Nurgle is not mere survival or endurance, but comprehension, mastery, and communion with the eternal cycle of decay. The cultist stands amidst the thick spores and bioluminescent fungal blooms, his body humming with transformation. Every pore, every cell, every hair is attuned to the sacred rhythm of decay. Pain and reverence are inseparable. Ecstasy and endurance merge into a singular, transcendent sensation. He feels the full weight of Nurgle's favor, a presence that is simultaneously terrifying and comforting, overwhelming yet intimate. The elders observe silently, their own bodies grotesque testaments to centuries of devotion, yet their eyes glow with approval. The cultist has crossed a threshold. He is no longer merely a participant in the pestilent crusade, no longer a disciple of rot and disease. He is a plague bearer, a living instrument of the Plague Lord's will. His body bears the sacred marks, pustules, fungal growths, and a subtle luminescence that signals both vitality and corruption. Each feature is a symbol of mastery, each change a testament to the trials endured and lessons learned. The whisper, now a constant, resonant chorus, affirms his new status. He senses it not only in thought, but in every fiber of his being. Knowledge, perception, and power flow in unison. He perceives the hidden currents of infection, the subtle imbalances in the world, and the potential of decay to transform, corrupt, and enlighten. He understands that the Plague Lord's gift is not static. It is a living, evolving communion, a continuous dialogue between devotee and God, between the temporal and the eternal. In this heightened state, the cultist begins to extend his influence with deliberate, sacred intent. The spores he disperses carry not only infection, but guidance, shaping the growth of disease in harmony with the grand design. He observes the subtle responses of living organisms, how mold spreads across surfaces, how insects propagate decay, how fevers bloom in perfect synchrony, and he adjusts, intervenes and orchestrates with precision. Every act is simultaneously devotion, mastery and expression of divine will. The chamber itself seems to pulse with recognition. Fungal blooms tremble in rhythm with his heartbeat, spores hover longer in the air, and even the shadows cast by bioluminescent growths twist and writhe as though acknowledging his transformation. He feels an intimate connection to every living, dying and decaying element around him. The boundaries between self, garden and hive blur. He is simultaneously individual and collective, vessel and conductor, disciple and instrument. Visions of future conquests, of entire worlds touched by the Plague Lord, unfold before him. Unlike earlier glimpses, these are not chaotic, they are deliberate, harmonious, and inevitable. He sees the potential to shape the course of history, to transform civilizations, to guide the flow of life and death across entire ecosystems. The weight of responsibility is immense, yet exhilarating. Nurgle's favor is not a burden, it is a calling, a revelation, and a path toward eternal communion with the god of decay. By the conclusion of the ritual, the cultist rises fully transformed. His devotion has been sanctified, his endurance rewarded, and his understanding deep. The elders step back, their approval silent but absolute, acknowledging that a new plague bearer walks among them. He feels the sacred pulse of Nurgle in every motion, every breath, every thought. The pestilent crusade, the garden of rot, the trials endured, all converge into this singular moment of revelation. As he leaves the chamber, the cultist carries more than infection or skill. He carries insight, mastery, and communion. The world beyond the hive is vast, fragile, and fertile for transformation. With each step he embodies both the patience and inevitability of decay, the harmony of suffering and understanding, and the eternal inexorable reach of Nurgle. The whisper, now inseparable from his own voice, sings with quiet triumph. Endure, observe, spread, transform. He is no longer just a servant, he is a herald of the Plague Lord, a living testament to the beauty, inevitability, and power of decay. The air within the hive quivers with anticipation, thick with spores, heat, and the subtle metallic tang of decay. The feast of pestilence is not a celebration of joy, but a sacred ritual of communion, transformation, and devotion. The cultist, now a seasoned plague bearer, steps into the vast hall where the Brotherhood has gathered, each figure grotesque, yet radiant in the strange, quiet majesty of their devotion. The chamber hums with unseen life, the rhythm of decay, weaving through the assembled bodies like a living cult. Tables, if they can be called that, are laden with offerings both natural and corrupted, fungal blooms pulsing with virulent spores, fruits, swollen and subtly rotting, meats that glisten with infectious sheen, and fluids thick with microbial life. Each offering is sacred, prepared with meticulous care, and imbued with the essence of Nurgle himself. The cultist moves among them with reverence, inhaling the heady mixture of scents, feeling the vibrations of life and
interlaced in every corner of the hall. The feast is a sensory baptism, a ritual that binds body, mind, and spirit to the eternal rhythms of the Plague Lord. Elders lead the congregation in chants low and resonant, words that twist the air, vibrate through flesh, and awaken latent spores. The cultist joins in, the syllables flowing over his tongue with familiarity and purpose. The whisper, now inseparable from his own consciousness, harmonizes with the chants, guiding him to subtle gestures, precise movements, and conscious awareness of every detail. Participation is not passive, it is an act of creation, a weaving of devotion and influence into the tapestry of the feast. The feast is more than sustenance, it is instruction. Each bite, each sip, each inhalation carries lessons in endurance, perception, and harmony with decay. The cultist observes others, noting the minor transformations, the spread of spores, and the subtle interactions between body and environment. He tastes, inhales, and partakes with intention, feeling the sacred symphony of infection flow through him. Each act reinforces communion with Nurgle, teaching that sustenance, suffering, and transformation are inseparable. Communion extends beyond the physical. The cultist senses the interplay of thought, intention, and devotion within the brotherhood. Each individual is both separate and integral, a cell in a larger organism that breathes, moves, and thinks with purpose. Subtle glances, deliberate gestures, and synchronized actions form a language of devotion, an unspoken dialogue that conveys hierarchy, respect, and unity. He participates fully, both student and contributor, understanding that the feast is as much about shared consciousness as it is about shared sustenance. The whispers of Nurgle intensify, guiding him toward deeper understanding. He recognizes that the feast is also a rehearsal, a preparation for the broader work of the pestilent crusade. The careful exchange of spores, the nurturing of growths, and the observation of minor ailments are microcosms of the larger patterns of infection he orchestrates beyond the hive. Patience, observation, and precision are celebrated, while recklessness is absent. The feast teaches that devotion is expressed not in haste, but in careful, deliberate, and intentional action aligned with the god's design. A ritual circle is formed at the center of the hall, spores suspended in the air, fungal growths glowing faintly, and the scent of decay thickening into a tangible presence. The cultist kneels as elders offer blessings through touch, breath, and shared infection. Each connection is deliberate, a transfer of both knowledge and essence. The cultist feels the convergence of body, spirit, and environment as a singular pulse, the unity of the brotherhood amplified through shared participation. The feast is a crucible, transforming not only flesh, but perception, understanding, and devotion. By the end of the first cycle, the cultist is immersed fully in the sacred rhythms of the feast. The hall vibrates with life, death, and decay intertwined. Every sensory input is a lesson, every action an act of devotion. The cultist realizes that mastery is not solely about infection or endurance, but about harmony between self and brethren, body and spirit, disease and transformation. The Feast of Pestilence is not merely a celebration, it is a living testament to the philosophy of Nurgle, a ritual that binds the faithful to eternal communion through decay, suffering, and understanding. The cultist moves among the brotherhood with purpose, feeling the vibrations of shared devotion reverberate through the hall. Every gesture is measured, every inhalation deliberate, every contact with the offerings and the environment precise. Spores cling to skin and clothing, not as nuisance, but as sacred marks of participation. The feast is a living classroom, teaching patience, observation, and the delicate art of manipulating life and decay in harmony. Each sensation, from the acrid scent of fungal blooms to the subtle heat of microbial growths, becomes a tool of understanding. The elders demonstrate the subtle interplay between contagion and environment. The cultist observes how a careful adjustment in humidity, a slight movement of mold, or a targeted touch can influence the growth and spread of infection. Each act is deliberate, refined, and guided by an intimate knowledge of Nurgle's will. He mimics their movements, feeling the pulse of decay, synchronize with his own heartbeat. Every breath taken, every bite, every sip is a conscious act of communion, reinforcing the sacred connection between body, mind, and the eternal rhythms of corruption. The feast also tests the cultist's endurance. Meals are not indulgences, but trials of tolerance and perception. The air is thick with spores, every bite carries latent infection, and every inhalation is a lesson in patience. The whisper guides him through moments of discomfort, teaching him to embrace the sensations as tools for understanding. Pain, nausea, and disorientation are not obstacles, they are signals, reminders that Nurgle's gifts are holistic, encompassing both body and mind. Through endurance, the cultist refines his ability to perceive subtle changes in himself, the brotherhood, and the surrounding environment. Interactions between cultists reveal the silent language of the feast. Glances, gestures, and shared motions communicate intent, hierarchy, and understanding. The cultist participates fully, contributing to the flow of energy without disrupting it. He notes the subtle ways knowledge is transferred through touch, through shared observation, and through the careful orchestration of infection. The feast is as much about mental and spiritual alignment as it is about physical participation. Mastery requires synchronization, not only with Nurgle, but with every member of the Brotherhood and every living, decaying element within the chamber. The elders introduce the central rite, the blessing of pestilence. Cultists kneel around a circular arrangement of fungal blooms and infected offerings. The cultist feels the full resonance of the ritual as the elders chant, the air vibrating with low guttural harmonic. The whispers of Nurgle intertwine with the chants, guiding him to precise movements and gestures that amplify the sacred energy. Each touch, each inhalation, each connection with the offerings strengthens his bond with the Plague Lord and enhances his comprehension of the divine rhythms of decay. The culmination of the feast is both subtle and overwhelming. Spores suspended in the air shimmer faintly, the fungal blooms pulse with newfound life, and the scent of decay becomes almost tangible, a living force that wraps around every participant. The cultist feels the convergence of knowledge, skill, and devotion within himself, recognizing that he has absorbed lessons that extend far beyond the hive. He perceives the interconnectedness of all things touched by the Plague Lord, the spread of contagion, the growth of mold, the cycles of suffering and transformation, as a single harmonious system. By the end of this second cycle, the cultist is fully immersed in the feast's sacred rhythm. His body, mind, and spirit resonate with Nurgle's influence. He perceives subtleties previously invisible, understands connections previously hidden, and embraces the unity of corruption and devotion. The feast has taught him that mastery is not forceful, not hasty, but patient, deliberate, and precise. Every moment is an opportunity for observation, every act a manifestation of devotion, and every sensation a lesson in the eternal cycles of decay. The final stage of the feast is an immersion beyond the physical. The cultist kneels before the central bloom, a massive fungal formation glowing faintly with bioluminescent spores, pulsating with life and decay alike. He feels the combined presence of the Brotherhood, the whispered guidance of Nurgle, and the subtle omnipresent rhythm of the Garden of Rot within him. This moment transcends ritual. It is communion, transformation, and revelation woven into a singular experience. Elders move among the participants, their touch carrying knowledge, essence, and subtle contagion. The cultist absorbs the teachings, feeling spores and microbial life fuse with his own body. Pain, once sharp and alien, is now familiar, a vehicle for understanding and communion. Each pulsation of the fungal bloom resonates with his own heartbeat, reinforcing the unity between self, brethren, and the eternal cycles of decay. The feast is no longer a sequence of actions, it is an orchestration of thought, motion, and essence in perfect harmony with Nurgle's will. The cultist begins to extend influence consciously, through subtle gestures, breath, and presence. He guides the growth of fungal blooms, the spread of spores, and the subtle shifts in microbial activity. The feast becomes both a rehearsal and a practice ground for mastery on a grander scale. He senses the interconnectedness of all infected elements within the whole, the living, the decaying, and the in-between, and begins to manipulate them as one would conduct a symphony. Each adjustment is deliberate, each observation meticulous, each action sacred. The whispers of Nurgle evolve into a full chorus, guiding not only motion, but understanding. The cultist perceives the eternal cycles of life and decay as they manifest both within and beyond the hive. He sees the influence of infection spreading across worlds, the patient reach of the Plague Lord's will, and the subtle harmonies that govern both growth and decline. His body resonates with these insights, every cell aligned with the rhythms of entropy and renewal. He is both observer and participant, student and master, vessel and conductor of divine corruption. The feast also reinforces the bonds within the Brotherhood. Shared experience, shared infection, and shared devotion create an unspoken network of understanding. Cultists communicate with glances, gestures, and vibrations of presence, a silent dialogue that conveys hierarchy, respect, and trust. The cultist recognizes his place within this web, neither above nor below, but integral to the flow of energy, knowledge, and devotion. The feast becomes a crucible not just for body and spirit, but for fellowship, aligning all participants with Nurgle's eternal purpose. As the feast reaches its zenith,
The cultist is flooded with awareness. He perceives every subtle interaction, the shimmer of spores on skin, the faint pulse of fungal growths, the nuanced reactions of his brethren. He sees the pathways of infection, the delicate interplay of cause and effect, and the slow, inevitable bloom of decay that will radiate out. Knowledge and devotion are inseparable, skill and understanding intertwined, and the cultist experiences a clarity that is both exhilarating and humbling. By the conclusion of the feast, the cultist emerges transformed yet again. He carries within him the cumulative lessons of endurance, observation and communion. His body is marked with the sacred signs of favor, his mind hums with comprehension, his spirit resonates with the eternal rhythm of decay. The feast has taught him patience, precision and the sacred interplay of life and corruption. He perceives the infinite potential for transformation and the beauty inherent in every act of decay. As he steps out of the hall, the air of the hive seems alive with unseen currents, vibrating with potential. The cultist knows that the lessons of the feast will guide his actions in the pestilent crusade, in the garden, and beyond. He is fully aware that Nurgle's gifts are not static, they are living, evolving, and eternal. Every breath, every motion, every act of observation or intervention becomes a testament to the divine philosophy he now embodies. The whispers, the brotherhood, the garden, and the feast converge into a singular truth: endure, observe, spread, transform, and he walks forward, a living herald of the Plague Lord, carrying the sacred knowledge and the eternal duty of devotion, infection and revelation. The cultist stands at the edge of the hive, gazing into the sprawling expanse beyond. The world is vast, fragile and teeming with life, yet every corner hums with the inevitability of decay. The lessons of the garden, the pestilent crusade and the feast of pestilence converge within him. He feels the whisper not as an echo, but as a living pulse, guiding every thought, every breath, every motion. Nurgle's dominion is eternal, patient, and unyielding, and the cultist now understands his role within this infinite design. The eternal cycle begins with observation. Every seed, every organism, every fragment of rot carries a lesson. The cultist surveys the land beyond the hive, noting the rhythm of life and death, the patterns of growth and decay. The whispers guide him to subtle nuances: a leaf curling with infection, a bloom fading into rot, a stream tainted with unseen spores. Each instance is a thread in the grand tapestry of existence, and the cultist feels the weight and honor of being both observer and participant. He moves deliberately, each step a communion with the unseen forces that shape the world. Spores trail in his wake, unseen yet potent, carrying with them the quiet influence of the Plague Lord. His presence is transformative, yet subtle, a testament to patience, precision and devotion. The pestilent crusade was a trial of skill, the feast of pestilence a test of communion. Now in the field, the eternal cycle becomes both art and philosophy, the culmination of all lessons, the living manifestation of Nurgle's patient dominion. The cultist witnesses the interplay of life and corruption on a grander scale than ever before. Communities shift, ecosystems respond, and even the wind seems to carry the faint hum of microbial activity. He recognizes the delicate balance between vitality and decay, understanding that disruption is not destruction, it is transformation. The whisper guides him to influence subtly, to act without haste, to shape the currents of infection with intention. Each motion, each breath, each glance becomes a component of the eternal symphony. His communion extends to the natural world itself. Insects, plants, fungi and microorganisms respond to his presence, each attuned to the sacred rhythm he has internalized. He perceives the hidden networks of life, the pathways of contagion, and the subtle energies of transformation. Knowledge and intuition converge, devotion and action synchronize. The cultist is no longer merely a servant or student, he is a steward of Nurgle's will, a conductor of decay, and a participant in the infinite, self-renewing cycle of life and corruption. The eternal cycle also tests the boundaries of understanding. The cultist encounters resistance, unseen barriers, resilient communities, and unyielding life form. He observes, adapts, and strategizes with patience and clarity, understanding that Nurgle's dominion is not about force, but persistence. Subtle manipulation, careful guidance, and unwavering devotion are the tools of true influence. Each obstacle becomes a lesson, each success a reflection of mastery, and each failure a reminder that patience and observation are as sacred as action. Through it all, the whisper remains constant, a living guide and companion. It speaks not only to thought, but to instinct, to breath, to every pulse of the body. It reinforces the principles of endurance, perception and transformation, weaving them into a seamless whole. The cultist feels both the weight and the grace of this guidance, understanding that mastery is not merely personal, it is an extension of Nurgle's eternal plan, a flow of divine influence that transcends time, space and mortality. By the end of this first cycle of the eternal cycle, the cultist perceives a new clarity. He is fully aware of the interconnectedness of all things, life, decay, suffering and renewal. He senses the infinite threads of influence, the pathways of transformation, and the inexorable reach of the Plague Lord. The eternal cycle is not an end, but a continuum. Every observation, every act, every breath contributes to the ongoing manifestation of divine corruption, and the cultist walks forward, fully integrated, fully devoted, fully transformed. The cultist moves through the world with deliberate awareness, attuned to every nuance of life and decay. Each plant, each insect, each microbe becomes a teacher, a thread in the vast, interconnected web of the eternal cycle. The whispers of Nurgle guide him to observe subtleties invisible to the uninitiated, the faint sheen of fungal spores along a branch, the slow curling of a leaf succumbing to infection, the quiet pulse of microbial activity in soil and water. These are not mere signs, they are lessons, the language of transformation, and the script of divine intention. He extends influence with care, shaping the spread of disease, the growth of decay, and the subtle rhythms of life, with the precision of a master. Each movement is intentional, each breath synchronized with the surrounding environment, each gesture a conduit for the Plague Lord's will. The cultist is no longer merely a participant, he is a conductor, orchestrating the unseen harmonies of pestilence, the ebb and flow of corruption, and the perpetual cycles of life, death and renewal. Interactions with mortal communities reveal the subtle power of patient influence. The cultist observes without interference, noting habits, weaknesses and vulnerabilities. He identifies points where infection can take root without detection, where fear and ignorance can amplify the spread of disease, and where resilience can be carefully eroded to align with the Plague Lord's design. Every observation is sacred, every subtle intervention a reflection of devotion, and every ripple of change a testament to the patience and foresight required to master the eternal cycle. Through these observations, the cultist gains profound insight into the duality of creation and destruction. Decay is not merely the absence of life, it is an instrument of transformation, a conduit through which growth, change, and renewal emerge. The whisper teaches him that suffering is not punishment, but a medium of enlightenment. He begins to perceive every act of corruption as an opportunity for understanding, every minor infection as a lesson in the sacred balance of existence, and every cycle of pestilence as a manifestation of divine wisdom. The natural world responds to his presence in subtle, remarkable ways. Fungi bloom with intention, spores disperse in controlled patterns, and microorganisms flourish in precisely targeted locations. The cultist senses the invisible threads connecting every organism, every infection, every shift in the environment. Knowledge and intuition merge, observation and action converge. He moves as both student and master, a participant in the eternal rhythms that govern the spread of decay and the perpetuation of life. Challenges arise, yet none are insurmountable. Resilient communities, unforeseen environmental variables, and natural resistance test his skill, patience, and understanding, but the eternal cycle rewards diligence and foresight. The cultist adapts, modifies and adjusts, guided by the whispers, by observation and by devotion. Each obstacle becomes a lesson, each minor failure an opportunity to refine technique, and each subtle success a confirmation of alignment with Nurgle's will. The cycle is continuous, yet mastery grows with each iteration. Through the delicate interplay of observation, intervention and reflection, the cultist comes to embody the philosophy of the Plague Lord. He recognizes that patience, precision and understanding are as sacred as action, and that the eternal cycle is not merely a concept. It is lived, felt, and enacted through every thought, every gesture, and every interaction with the world. The whispers resonate through him, not as commands, but as affirmation, reinforcing the unity of body, mind and spirit, with the divine rhythm of decay. By the end of the second cycle, the cultist perceives the world as a living, breathing manifestation of Nurgle's will. He senses the infinite potential for transformation, the subtle harmonies of life and corruption, and the endless interplay of suffering and renewal. He understands that the eternal cycle is both infinite and intimate, spanning entire worlds, while manifesting in the smallest detail. And within this understanding, he feels purpose, connection, and the quiet triumph of mastery born from devotion. The cultist moves with a newfound clarity, attuned to every subtle pulse of life and decay. He perceives the hidden patterns of infection, the imperceptible currents of influence, and the intricate choreography of entropy and renewal. Each step, each breath, each glance, is a deliberate act, aligned with the rhythm of the Plague Lord and the eternal dance of decay. He witnesses the world responding to his presence. Fungal blooms grow where none should, microbial colonies shift imperceptibly, and disease moves with a quiet inevitability, yet all is balanced. No chaos dominates, no indiscriminate destruction occurs. The eternal cycle is not about annihilation, it is about harmony within entropy, about understanding the delicate interplay of life, death, and transformation. The cultist feels the weight of responsibility, but also the profound satisfaction of alignment with a force that is infinite, patient, and relentless. Through this communion, he understands the broader philosophy of Nurgle, that suffering, decay, and corruption are not evils to be feared, but instruments of enlightenment and transformation. Each pestilence, each infection, each cycle of degeneration, carries lessons for both mortal and divine alike. The cultist perceives these truths with clarity, recognizing that his role is both active and observant, both participant and steward. He is a bridge between the ephemeral world and Nurgle's eternal dominion. The cultist now extends influence across multiple planes of the environment. He guides subtle shifts in infection, manipulates the growth of fungal patterns, and adjusts the rhythms of decay with intuitive precision. Every action reinforces the eternal cycle, every gesture contributes to the harmony of corruption, and every breath resonates with devotion. The whisper, now inseparable from thought itself, affirms and refines his understanding, transforming knowledge into instinct, devotion into mastery, and observation into creation. Communion with the Brotherhood also reaches a heightened state. Shared understanding, synchronized movement, and subtle transmissions of essence create a network of influence that amplifies each participant's effect. The cultist perceives the invisible threads connecting all members, allowing him to coordinate subtle interventions across the hive and beyond. Together, they become a living organism, a unified expression of Nurgle's will, a testament to the patient, deliberate and sacred nature of transformation. Visions of the farthest reaches of the Plague Lord's dominion unfold before him. Entire worlds bend subtly to the rhythms of contagion, civilizations shift imperceptibly under the influence of disease, and the eternal flow of life and decay stretches beyond comprehension. The cultist realizes that the eternal cycle is infinite in both scale and detail, encompassing everything from the smallest spore to the vastest city. His comprehension expands, his devotion deepens, and his mastery of subtle influence reaches its apex. By the culmination of this final cycle, the cultist has transcended the boundaries of mortal understanding. His body, mind, and spirit resonate with the full harmony of life, decay, and renewal. He embodies Nurgle's philosophy, not through force, but through patience, observation, and deliberate action. Every movement, every thought, every act of influence contributes to the perpetual flow of the eternal cycle. He is both vessel and conductor, student and master, servant and herald. As he gazes across the world he has touched, the cultist understands the ultimate truth of devotion. The eternal cycle is unbroken, infinite, and self-sustaining. Nurgle's will is not a momentary force, but a living, breathing presence woven into every corner of existence. And in this realization, the cultist finds both purpose and peace, knowing that his actions, patience, and devotion are part of a design that transcends time, space, and mortality. The whispers affirm one final time: endure, observe, spread, transform. He walks forward into the endless cycle, a living testament to the majesty, inevitability, and eternal rhythm of Nurgle's dominion.